Little Nightmares has one of the best video game tutorials I have ever seen, in that it kind of doesn't have one. Developed by Tarsier Studios and released back in 2017, sorry if I butchered the name of the studio there, it was one of those indie titles I'd always heard about but never actually played. Recently I saw it was on sale, so decided to give it a shot, and then proceeded to enjoy it so much that I completed the game in one sitting and immediately bought the DLC straight after, which, coming from me these days, is pretty high praise. What I think I found so captivating about the game was its highly immersive atmosphere and its subtly told story. And there's something the game does early on that really helps suck you into its dark and mysterious world, something that seems so simple on the surface but really makes a huge difference in how you experience its opening chapter, setting the stage for the rest of the game. You see, Little Nightmares doesn't hold your hand like other games do. Tutorials can often become distracting or overwhelming, or even condescending and patronising at times, so much so that the more satirical games out there have even made a joke out of it.
Activate tutorial programs for Sergeant Rex Power Code.
Military navigation for idiots.
Where most mainstream games open up with seemingly endless reams of expositional dialogue and walls of text explaining their mechanics, Little Nightmares takes a more minimalist approach, and the result is a breath of fresh air. You open with a short 30-second cutscene. There's no dialogue, but the visuals tell you all you need to know for now. This woman is bad. She seems pretty bad. Then you wake up, you're in what looks like an old industrial alleyway. It seems cold and you're just a child, maybe homeless. Questions will start to bounce around your head, but the game won't give you any answers. Not yet anyway. The game doesn't even make it clear when you have control of your character. I spent a good few seconds waiting, only to realise I could now walk around. If you're anything like me, and if you are, then I can only apologise, then you'll have spent your first few minutes of the game stumbling around in the dark trying to figure out what's going on and what you're supposed to be doing. Unsure how to progress, I started pressing different buttons, and then suddenly, there was light. The murky surroundings are illuminated in a flickering yellow glow. The murky surroundings are illuminated in a flickering yellow glow, and you can finally see the path ahead. You follow it only to find a dead end, and again you might wander back and forth exploring and seeing if you've missed something. You'll probably eventually notice this hatch in the wall and see that it has a handle, but you don't even know if that's something you can interact with in this game. So you experiment pressing more buttons or keys until eventually you grab the hatch and open it. You figure out how to crouch and you go inside. Now, so many games would have just told you outright, press this to use your lighter, press this to grab things, press this to crouch down, but just think how much this would have detracted from this opening. The level is presented in such a way that you're supposed to feel lost, you're supposed to feel alone and confused. There's no omniscient presence telling you what you need to do to proceed, nothing to tell you what button to press or what objective you have. There's no unrealistically obvious level design signposting what is interactable and what isn't that kind of breaks the world building. You're just left alone to figure out a solution for yourself. The solution, once you know it, is simple, but that process of finding out for yourself what your character can do really is half the fun here. There are actually various entities within the environment you can interact with that have no real purpose. They don't help you to progress, but it makes everything feel that much more tangible and believable within the world, and you don't end up asking yourself, why can I hang on this or pick up that thing, but not interact with this thing which looks like I could do the exact same thing. This approach is repeated all throughout the first chapter of Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares. Where you slowly figure out the capabilities and limitations of your character. And it's honestly kind of genius. Simple actions that would be totally mindless in most games become these little mini puzzles that you need to solve, which lends itself perfectly towards the rest of the game, as it teaches you that this game is all about exploration and experimentation, as puzzles get a little more complex or a little more intense. The first chapter perfectly tutorializes the game's mechanics without ever explicitly telling you what they are, like more traditional tutorials might. It teaches you through your actions as the player, not pop-up boxes with paragraphs and paragraphs of text. Okay, yes, there are a few moments where if the game thinks you're struggling with a certain puzzle, you might get a small hint, but I didn't encounter this often, and I do understand that this may be genuinely helpful for certain players and stop them from getting too frustrated and quitting the game before it's even really begun. I didn't even realise in my first playthrough of the opening chapter that you could pick up these statues and smash them. At one point I actually carried a statue with me, trying to find out if there was somewhere I needed to put it, until eventually later in the game I realised you could throw things, and then tried it with the next statue I found and saw this. Okay, yes, it's basically just a collectible, but that's an infinitely more interesting way to incorporate collectibles than to simply have you walk up to it and absorb it immediately. Again, it kind of helps add to the mystery of the world on your first playthrough. The same goes for the gnomes. I had no idea that if you followed them, you'd find them in these little secret rooms, and hugging them basically acted as another type of collectible. Yes, hugging them. This really serves to offer replay value to the tutorial mission, where you may have overlooked certain things simply because you didn't learn about them until later in the game. It's a bit like a Metroidvania, but instead of upgrading and backtracking to unlock new areas, you're just sort of learning the mechanics and then replaying levels and seeing them in a new light, now knowing the full extent of what your character can do. In addition to encouraging you to problem solve and interact with the environment, this minimalist approach to tutorialization also makes you pay attention to the design of the world itself. This is crucial because the game doesn't really feature any dialogue, and the story is all told visually, through its environment and its setting. It builds its world gradually, each new level answering questions you may have had whilst simultaneously raising new ones. And again, the storytelling doesn't hold your hand. You're never explicitly told what's going on, but as the game encourages you right from the start to pay attention to the details of your surroundings, you pick up on that much more as you traverse through the game's dark and depressing world. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the game's first hostile encounter and why the practically non-existent tutorial makes it all the more interesting. When creepy Mr. Tickle first bursts through that door...
You didn't know that there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Oh, well, there is.
It's intense, and as always, you're on your own here. The game doesn't say, go here to hide, or press this to be silent. You don't know which of your actions will keep you safe, and which ones might result in you being found. This scene is a relatively easy sequence to complete when you know what you're doing, but all the suspense comes from not quite knowing exactly what you're supposed to do to survive here the first time around. Think how quickly the tension would just evaporate if the game was like, yeah, just do this and you'll be fine. It would totally rob the moment of all excitement. Yes, there are visual clues to help you, and you can assume that the threat is gone, but you never really know for certain. There's no highlighted objects with a hide button, there's no detection level meter over the enemy's head. You just have to hope that the spaghetti-armed freak is gone for now, but now you know that the world is no longer safe, and you get that sinking feeling that you'll be facing him again very soon. It's for these reasons I truly feel that Little Nightmares has one of the best tutorials I've ever played. It works perfectly with the style, atmosphere and design that the game presents, and is a much richer experience as a result. Now, I totally understand the need for tutorials as a whole, and particularly in games with hundreds of different complex mechanics, but I think some games could learn a few lessons here and be a bit more subtle in their design, and try and incorporate their tutorials into the world of the game itself almost. Allowing players room to think and problem solve for themselves is all part of the fun, otherwise we'd all just be pressing buttons in sequences dictated to us by a screen. I highly recommend going out and experiencing Little Nightmares for yourself, as there's so much more to discover in the game that I haven't even touched on, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the sequel has in store. When creepy Mr. Tickle first burst through the door... When creepy Mr. Tickle first burst through the door... Thanks everyone for watching. This is my second gaming related video that I have produced so far. Big thanks to my editor Cam for sticking with me on these and helping me out and capturing the footage. It's a new direction for the channel. I'm thinking of doing a few more in the future. I do still obviously want to produce more of my regular sort of film tips and advice videos that I've done in the past, and also some more Odd Ones episodes eventually when the pandemic allows us to meet up again and film those. But yeah, let us know if you're enjoying the new format, let us know what you'd like to see us cover next, and I will see you in the next one.